close encounters of the short kind. I've met, worked with, or interviewed an enormous list of Oscar, Grammy, Tony, Emmy winners, elite athletes, musicians, rock stars, politicians, criminals, and so on. Um, and even on a slow day, there's movie stars that I like to tell myself that I have one degree of separation from. But let me tell you about some of the ones that really didn't work out. Ray Milland, Van Johnson, and John Voight are all stars who just brushed me off. I was doing my late night radio show, a little Berner in the night, in the lobby of the Bayshore Hotel, and I spotted Ray Milland, who won an Oscar for playing an alcoholic in Lost Weekend, getting on the elevator or buzzing for the elevator, and I walked over to him and I said, "Good evening. Sir, I'm doing my radio show here. Would you like to join me for a few minutes?" And without missing a beat, he said, "Good evening, young man." Van Johnson, who was a giant star in the 40s, 50s, and 60s of every kind of movie, musical, drama, and so on, romance, he was looking in a shop window at the corner of Robson and Howe, and he brushed me off. Years later, John Voight was in the Chapters bookstore at Robson and Howe upstairs, and he glared at me when I looked at him as if to say, "You come any closer, buddy, and you're going to have a really bad time." Pierce Brosnan, on the other hand, who had just given up the Bond franchise, was crossing the street, and I happened to be all dressed up that day for some reason or other, and I stopped and I said, "Mr. Brosnan, I have to tell you that I loved your work in The Matador." And he was very happy to hear that. And so we ended up having a stroll for about a block or so and chatting. And he was very amiable. And, he wasn't inviting me to be his best friend, but he was very pleasant. With all the media contacts that I had, when the Grizzlies were playing NBA basketball in Vancouver, I got to stand on the parquet floor quite often and see all kinds of amazing people. And one night, I couldn't understand why the crowd was screaming madly and looking sort of in my direction, and it couldn't have been for me. And I looked, and standing right next to me, I should say towering above me, was the legendary Larry Bird. Leonard Cohen came and gave a lecture in the arts building at the University of Manitoba when I was in my early 20s, and later I was leaning against the wall having a cigarette in those days, and I heard this voice say to me, "How did I do, man?" And I turned around, and it was Leonard Cohen. I said, "You did great. The girls absolutely loved you." Around that same period, a year or so later, I was living in Vancouver, and I was at a folk club. And I remember the owner of the club getting up and making this announcement because Bob Dylan was in town, downtown, playing a big room. And he said, "Folks, there's some rumor that Bob Dylan may show up. Forget about it. He's not." And I just sort of giggled because Bob Dylan was sitting right next to me. At the Comedy Store on Sunset Boulevard in L.A., Clint Eastwood was sitting like elbow to elbow with me. All of this stuff is quite silly, but Pickle, these memories of almost skidding your knee on the rocks of fame, greatness, notoriety, wealth, power, won't get you through a crisis or boost your bank account, but they make good war stories in the bar or the cafe, and they remind us that at least 50% of our lives are absolutely sheer silliness.